We're going to work on feints today. Who knows what a feint is?
Like a bait.
Like a bait? All right, good. What else?
Head movement.
All right, so why do we do it?
To elicit a specific response.
Ooh, I like that. To elicit a specific response. Nice. So that's very specific. What does it do in general terms? It dictates the tempo to your opponent. It automatically helps you assume the role of being active, and it relegates them to being reactive. Does that make sense? All right, so what do you think the easiest feint is?
Fake punch.
Fake punch. All right, so if I was going to fake throwing a punch, what am I going to do to make you bite?
Like a jab.
All right. I don't have to do that much. Because if, come here, AB. All right. I'm going to make him react. See? I didn't have to move my hand. Right? If I'm here, he's already, I can use this. I don't normally rotate into my jab unless I'm really trying to stick the jab. My whole thing is I'm going to feint using movements that don't expend any energy. And I can do that. I can use my foot. I can use a head movement that's going to make him think I'm going to do something evasive to try to get him to throw a punch. So you have to think about what's the response you're trying to elicit. So first thing I want you to do is I just want you to throw a 1-1-2 on the bag. But what you're going to do on top of that is you're going to practice feinting with different parts. You can feint with the hand, you can feint with the shoulder, you can feint with the hip or the foot, any of those. But I want you to practice feinting the jab or some kind of offensive action with your left side and try feinting with different parts to see how it feels. All right, give it a try. All right, we're going to list different things that you can feint with. We're going to go over each one. The first one, the feet, the most committed. The thing with the feet is you can do this all you want, but especially the lower the competitive level of the fighter, the less they're going to bite on footwork. Why? Because they're going to be too zero-in on what your hands and your torso is doing. As you get better at boxing, you pay more attention to the feet. And at the end of the day, that's what you worry about. Because if I'm in good position and you're in bad position, you can't hit me. So all the other stuff kind of becomes superfluous. But the feet, if you're especially against a bad opponent, you actually have to use the feet differently. Feinting with the feet means setting up a pattern and then breaking the pattern. So what I want you to do, so you can do it one of two ways, really. You can either set up a pattern of closing and extending the range, or you can step off line. So you'll come in, you'll close range, and then you'll step off line with your attack. Or if you're better, it's kind of like the beginning level. The intermediate level is to step off line automatically in your attack, and we call it an approach angle. So instead of walking in, I'm automatically here, and I'm modifying whatever my initial attack point or line of entry is. How I get from point A to point B is not a straight line.
And once you make that modification, then you hit.
Then you hit, exactly. So what you're doing is you're establishing a line that your opponent gets committed to defending against, and then you change it at the last possible second before engaging. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So that's like the intermediate, higher level way. The other way is just to use your feet to close range. Committed step, boom, I go in for the punch. Right? So if you're less comfortable, just work on the range. If you're more comfortable, work on changing the angle. Throw whatever combination you want. If you're not good at making up combinations, throw a 1-1-2-3. All right, go.
Sure, change it.
All right, so easy. Just change the range with your feet. Try to set a pattern. Medium, change the approach angle. It means you start initiating your attack, but before you make contact, you change your angle somewhere in there. Most advanced is to change your approach angle and to change or to feint with your feet during the combination. So like we work a lot in these classes. We work on like stepping over with a hook or changing range while you're throwing a two. It's essentially that, except instead of committing to every foot movement, when I throw my hook, I can come over as if I'm going to step, right? Bang! And I change up, go the other way. Does that make sense? It's kind of the most advanced because you're trying to think about as many things as possible at the same time. All right, so for the knees are simple. If I do this, what am I going to do?
Body shot.
Yes, or at least I make you think I'm going to body shot. So what you do, you throw your high jab, drop, and then come back up. Or drop and look at the body, and then stand up, throw an up jab. All you're doing is trying to make the opponent think you're going to the body. Or you get low and then come up like you're going to attack the head and then drop back low. Right? Either way, it's a change up. It's pay attention here, attack here, pay attention here, attack here. Like make your opponent pay attention to that.
Yeah.
So now what I want you to do is throw a 4-punch combination, but I want you to at some point drop down and either use that as a bait to set up a headshot or stand up, feint up top, and then use your knees to drop down and actually hit the body. All right, go ahead. All right, so knees, right? Fake the elevation change. Add elevation changes. That's how you can use your knees to augment your feinting, right? I'm going to drop, make you think I'm going to drop, or I'm actually going to drop and then stand up and attack somewhere else, right? It's baiting, it's feinting, all these things are kind of related. The better generalized understanding you have of these things, the better you're going to do when you have to do specific things, which is why I put hip in the middle. So the hip is the whole body feint. What does that mean? That means if you try to use your hip to feint, look, my whole body moves. So what's better than to think about this as an individual thing? Think about this as a thing that can add exaggeration to every other feint. So like if I'm trying to feint you with my foot and you're just not biting, I add the hip motion into it, or I add the hip motion sideways, like that. What's going to happen is it's going to amplify the feint or the exaggeration of the feint that comes from the rest of the body. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So shoulder. This is one of the most effective ones because people throw bad punches generally. The average person doesn't know how to throw a good feint or a good telegraph-less punch, right? Most people do this and then they throw, or they do this, right? First thing the human eye identifies, you learn this in infantry school. First thing the human identifies, lateral movement. So anything you do like this that causes some kind of change visually from side to side is an automatic giveaway. A good punch comes without a telegraph. So if you're gonna feint with the things that are obvious, right? Foot, pretty obvious. Knee, less obvious, which is why the knee is gonna be used for changing elevation, faking up and down. The feet, fakes going forward and back. The hip exaggerates whatever you're doing. The shoulder is a side to side. And usually it accompanies a straightforward punch. So if I want you to think I'm throwing my jab, that's a good way to do it. That's how I got him to jump earlier. It was just from the shoulder. What you do, you get them to react. You do it until they don't bite it anymore. And then you throw a punch with no telegraph. Now all of a sudden, they don't know whether they're supposed to react or not. And chances are they're not going to figure out that it's because you've been baiting them with your feint initially. So the other thing, this is kind of higher level, you can add feints to things that you don't normally do. Make something a feint that is actually like you're inventing it because you never, like lifting your elbow. We're going to go over elbows in a second. Lift your elbow like you're going to do this before you punch, right? And throw a shitty jab. And then throw a straight one. Do things like that is adding another layer of complication. Anyway, so the shoulder. I want you to work on throwing straights, jabs, and twos. And I want you to use your shoulder as a way of feinting, throwing either your one or your two. All right, go ahead, practice. So what we just talked about there,
That's a good one.
right? When you make your opponent think, you wear them out faster. The brain is an extremely hungry organ, and it sucks up sugars with complex thinking very quickly. So the more you make them think, the more you make them hesitate. And the more you get them to hesitate, the more you can fill that time in with more ways of dictating the terms of the engagement. Now you're feeding them the tempo. Now you're making them reactive. Now you're making them wear down faster, right? And I don't want you to be thinking about these things when you're fighting. That's why I train them to you. You practice them on the bag, and then you go, and by the time you get to the fight, most of these things start to become automatic. So that over the course of your career, you automate the ones that you can. That's how you become a successful fighter. All right, so feinting with the shoulder. The other thing I pointed out that some of you were doing, feinting on one side and automatically attacking on the other. That's going to work for a couple punches. Just understand that at some point it's going to stop working. That's like everything. Every trick and gimmick, which is why I don't really believe in training that. I train solid fundamentals and then give you tips and tricks to use on top of those fundamentals. But I'm not a gimmick guy, right? I'll give you the tools, you make the art. All right, so the head. What the head does, you should always be engaged in passive head movement. Your head should be moving. Keep it offline. Put it online, change the tempo. You don't really have to feint with the head. You don't have to go like this. What's that going to do? Somebody's going to see that, they're just going to start sending punches at it, right? But what you do is you keep the head moving and then you change the rhythm up. And that is the thing that gets them, because they're going to start to fall into a rhythm too. We had a whole class about that, getting into each other's rhythm. Well, you set a rhythm and then you break it. And then you add your feints to that. So I'm here, I change, and now I have a spastic approach. Now you're getting more feedback that you have to address. And again, it comes back to feedback. What is your brain focusing on? What I don't want my opponent's brain focusing on is punching me. So I do everything possible to make them think about other things. All right, the elbow. Elbow's great for feinting where you're going to strike. If I drop the elbow low, people think you're going to send a low jab. You bring it up high, people think, or you're fighting Muay Thai, right? They think that you're either going to try to elbow them or they think that you're going to punch high. So use that. I'm going to come up here, bang, and then I drop down. I integrate the knee feint, change elevation, change the hand elevation, because the hand and the elbow are going to go in the same place. Lastly, the fist. Now we're going to do these last couple together, and then we'll integrate all of them. So with the fist, I can flick my fist a whole bunch of different ways, or I can do what's called a probing feint. Mayweather does that a lot. And when you practice that, it helps you develop feel. You don't need to kill the guy with every shot. You need to kill the guy with the right shots. All the rest of your shots, right? You're just seeing how he's going to react. Reconnaissance by fire. You send a couple shots, see how he reacts. If he tries to overdo it coming back, just make sure you're still defensively minded. Remember, always practice offensive defense and defensive offense. But what I want you to do, move your hand, put it in different places. This is an invite. This is an invite, right? Notice how my shoulder's out, my jaw's exposed. When I want to cover back up, I come into a closed stance. I bring my lead toes in, I shell up, I'm here. Really only have to worry about an overhand at that point, and I'm probably going to be able to roll off of it. So you got to integrate these things. Start applying single pieces of the huge amount of information I give you, and then stack the pieces together. So now we're going to use the elbow. I want you to change elevation, and I want you to change the location of the arm. If you're a fighter that typically stands here, figure out another way to stand. Here, 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 something. And then I want you to use the hand and the shoulder to augment your feints. Right? Put all that together. Give it a whirl. Yeah. Of these things. Why do we feint? Right? Send too much information. When you send them too much information, it causes analysis paralysis in their awake self, right? Consciously, now they're thinking. Subconsciously, what you're doing is overriding their nervous system. There's too much information that they have to respond and react to. What happens when you keep their nervous system overwhelmed, you're going to exhaust their energy consumption, and you're gonna activate their limbic system, right? There's gonna be some of that fight, flight, survival instinct is gonna start to kick in, or they're gonna override that and become over emotional, right? You see it all the time, particularly with bare knuckle fighters. Happens a lot, right? Because there's a lot more visceral experience there. There's a lot more immediate pain response, and also you see blood faster. All of those things influence your monkey mind, your internal monkey mind. So, what you do is you practice adding these things little bit by little bit, and you overdo them. Do it too much while you're hitting the heavy bag, while you're moving. Practice the touch, practice doing the little feints, overdo them, because then they become second nature. Once they become comfortable, then you just kind of do it. You'll be moving, right? My hands are nice and relaxed, and then I'm gonna get real tense for 1 second, and then I'm back to relaxed. Add all those pieces together, and ultimately, you're gonna dictate the terms of every engagement to your opponent. All right, so now we're gonna come off the bags, we're gonna shadow box for the next 3 minutes, and then y'all can all have a pleasant and wonderful weekend. All right, good work.